Revenge Office Stories. The music at my party cut out. Suddenly, every eye was on me. My boss, Daniel, was standing there with a smug grin, having just tried to humiliate me in front of everyone I knew and loved. He'd hijacked my moment of triumph and twisted it into a story about his own greatness. My friends looked confused, my parents looked pained, and my colleagues were staring at their shoes, practically radiating discomfort. "Is that all you've got?" he sneered. His voice was a low, venomous whisper meant only for me, but the contempt was plain for everyone to see. The tension in the room was so thick you could feel it. A slow smile spread across my face, but it didn't reach my eyes. They weren't filled with tears. They were filled with a cold, hard resolve I didn't know I had until that very moment. "Not quite," I said, my voice ringing out, surprisingly clear in the silence. I turned to the huge projector screen behind me, something I'd specifically requested from the venue. "I have one more thing to show everyone." I held up a small remote. "You see, Daniel has been talking a lot about being a mentor and teaching me lessons. So, I thought it would only be fair to share a little part of my recent education with all of you." What Daniel didn't know was that his attempt to destroy my big moment was the final piece of a trap I'd been setting for months. He thought he was the predator, circling his prey. He had no idea the trap had already sprung. The secret recording I was about to play wouldn't just ruin his night, it would end his career. But to understand why I had to do it, why I had to turn my own promotion party into a public execution, we need to go back to the beginning. We need to go back to the project that almost cost me everything. My name is Sarah. I'm 32, and until recently, I was what you'd call a model employee. For 5 years, I'd poured my heart and soul into my job as a project manager at a top marketing firm. I wasn't the loudest person in the room, and I didn't play politics. I let my work speak for itself. I believed in loyalty, hard work, and the old-fashioned idea that if you do a good job, you get rewarded. My boss, Daniel Bishop, was our department head, and for a long time I really saw him as a mentor. He was charismatic, sharp, and made you feel like you were part of an elite team. I respected him. That was my first mistake. This whole story really starts with the biggest project of my career, the Odyssey campaign. Our largest client, a tech giant, was about to launch a new product, and they needed a campaign that was nothing short of revolutionary. It was a career-defining opportunity, and Daniel assigned it to me to lead. I was ecstatic. This was the chance I had been working for all these years. For the next 4 months, the Odyssey campaign was my entire world. I wasn't working 9 to 5. I was living and breathing this project. My diet was basically lukewarm coffee and takeout I ate at my desk. My social life? Gone. I was the first one in the office and the last one out, long after the cleaners had gone home. I brainstormed the core strategy in the middle of the night, sketching ideas on a whiteboard in my empty apartment. I led my small, dedicated team through weeks of grueling market research, data analysis, and creative work. The concept we developed was bold, innovative, and backed by data. It was, without being arrogant, brilliant. And it was mine. Daniel stayed strategically distant through most of it. He'd check in here and there, offer a vague, "looks good, keep it up," and then vanish back into his office for important meetings. He saw every draft, every progress report. He knew exactly how much of myself and my team was poured into this. In our one-on-one meetings, he'd lay on the praise. "Sarah, this is exceptional," he'd say. "You're really proving yourself. The client is going to be blown away." He was making me believe he was my biggest champion. The first red flag popped up about 3 weeks before the final presentation. Daniel started asking for things he never had before. "Sarah, can you send me all the raw data files?" "Just for my records," he asked one afternoon. A few days later, forward me the final strategy deck. "I want to look it over." It seemed plausible. He was the boss. Of course he'd want to be prepared. But then I heard from a colleague that Daniel had been having private calls with our main client contact. That was weird. The protocol was for me, the project lead, to handle all client communication. I asked him about it casually and he just brushed it off. Just managing expectations at the executive level, Sarah. You focus on the creative. I chose to trust him. I told myself that bad feeling was just my own anxiety. Why would my boss, my mentor, do anything to undermine me, especially now? That trust was about to be shattered. The day of the presentation arrived. My team and I were buzzing with nervous energy. We had rehearsed until we were hoarse. The slides were perfect. This was our moment. 10 minutes before we were supposed to walk into the boardroom, Daniel pulled me into his office. He had this serious, almost sad look on his face. "Sarah, we have a small change of plans," he said. "I just got off the phone with the client. They've requested that I lead the presentation." I just stared at him, my brain refusing to compute. "What? Why?" "It's about showing executive commitment," he explained smoothly, his eyes full of fake sincerity. "They want to know the head of the department is personally invested. It's just politics. You know how it is. I'll be presenting your slides, your strategy." "Don't worry," he added, putting a hand on my shoulder. "I will make sure you and the team get all the credit you deserve. This is still your win." I was devastated and totally cornered. What could I do? Argue with my boss minutes before the biggest meeting of my career? Look like I wasn't a team player? So, with a heavy heart and a knot of dread in my stomach, I just nodded. "Okay, Daniel, I understand." I walked into that boardroom and sat on the sidelines, my team looking at me in total confusion. Daniel stood at the head of the table, my slide remote in his hand. And for the next hour, I watched a slow-motion robbery. He didn't just present my work, he became my work. He used the word "I" like a weapon. When I first conceived of this strategy, based on my analysis, I believe the only way forward is. He talked about the late nights and creative breakthroughs as if they were his. He never mentioned my name. He never mentioned the team. Not once. It was a masterful performance of erasure. I felt my blood run cold. I was invisible. This wasn't just professional betrayal. It felt deeply personal, like watching someone read my diary to a room full of strangers and claim the thoughts as their own. The shock left me breathless. When he finished, the clients erupted in applause. They praised Daniel's vision and leadership. He soaked it all in, a triumphant smile on his face, glancing at me every so often with a look that said, "See, this is how it's done." After the clients left, I caught him in the hallway. I was shaking, but I was determined to confront him. I kept my voice low. "Daniel, that was a great presentation. I was just surprised you didn't mention the team's contribution." He dropped the friendly mentor act instantly. His face went cold. "Sarah, the department shares in the win. My job is to manage the client. Your job is to produce the work. That's how this business works. Don't be so naive," he said, his tone sharp and dismissive. "Grow up." And with that, he turned and walked away, leaving me standing there alone as the full weight of what he'd done crashed down on me. A week went by in a haze of quiet fury. I went through the motions at work, my mind just replaying the theft over and over. What could I even do? Go to HR? It would be my word against a powerful department head's. I felt completely trapped, and the stress started to bleed into everything. I couldn't sleep. I barely ate. The feeling of safety I once had at my job was gone. Then, Daniel called me into his office. He was back to his charming self, beaming at me from across his huge mahogany desk. "Sarah, have a seat," he said warmly. "I have some fantastic news." I sat down, my whole body tense. "The client officially signed the multi-year contract this morning," he announced. "And thanks to the incredible success of the Odyssey campaign, I convinced management it was time to recognize the talent that made it happen. I've secured you a promotion. Congratulations. You're our new senior project manager." He said it like he was giving me some great, generous gift. But I knew exactly what it was. It was a bribe. Hush money with a new job title. The promotion was real, but the reason behind it was rotten. It was a calculated move to shut me up. He was betting on my ambition, assuming I'd be so grateful for the promotion that I'd forget he was the one who stole the credit in the first place. Outwardly, I forced a smile. I had to play his game. Daniel, I don't know what to say. Thank you, I said, my voice sounding distant to my own ears. You earned it, he said, the lie rolling off his tongue. And then he made his biggest mistake. You should celebrate this. Throw a party. Invite your friends, your family. He leaned forward, his eyes gleaming. I'll even come to show my support for my star player. And there it was, the ultimate underestimation. He didn't just think he'd gotten away with it. He was convinced I was a complete fool. He thought I'd be so dazzled by a promotion that I'd throw a party and let him, my tormentor, stand in the middle of it, soaking up the glory of my success like some benevolent king. He saw my party as just another stage for him. He couldn't imagine I was anything other than the naive girl he'd dismissed in the hallway. He had no idea about the cold, hard fury that was now solidifying in my gut. In that moment, a chilling calm settled over me. He wanted me to be emotional and irrational, but an outburst would get me nowhere. Instead, my path became crystal clear. He had just handed me the weapon and the location for his own execution. He wanted a party? Oh, I would give him a party he would never, ever forget. A party, I repeated, letting a flicker of what he'd see as excitement show on my face. That's a wonderful idea, Daniel. It would mean so much to me if you were there. He smiled, satisfied. Game over, or so he thought. As I walked out of his office, the planning had already begun. He had shattered my trust, and now I was going to shatter his world. My grief turned into something else. Cold, meticulous focus. This wasn't going to be impulsive. This was a strategic takedown. My goal wasn't just to make Daniel feel bad. It was to dismantle his lies with undeniable truth. He had built his success on my work, and I was going to reclaim every last piece of it. His greatest weakness was his arrogance, and I was going to use it against him. First, I became an archivist. For a week, I spent my evenings digging through 5 years of company emails related to the Odyssey campaign. Every email where I'd sent Daniel a draft or a progress report was saved to a password-protected hard drive. I downloaded Slack logs, highlighting the exact conversations where my team and I had brainstormed the core concepts he later claimed as his own. The crown jewel was the original PowerPoint file. I went into the file's properties and took screenshots of the metadata. There it was in black and white. Author, Sarah Miller. Created on, date. Last modified by Sarah Miller. Timestamped the evening before the presentation, right before I sent it to him. I organized everything into a timeline of irrefutable proof. I made 3 backups, one on a hard drive, one on a secure cloud server, and one on a USB stick I kept in my purse. I wasn't taking any chances, but documents can be explained away by a manipulator like Daniel. I needed more. I needed his own voice. I needed him to confess. I checked my state's laws and confirmed we have one-party consent for recording conversations. As long as I was part of the conversation, I could legally record it without him knowing. It was time to set the trap. A week before the party, I requested a meeting with him to discuss my new role. He eagerly agreed, probably seeing it as another chance to lecture me. I walked into his office, my heart pounding, but kept my face calm. Before I sat down, I discreetly placed my phone on the corner of his desk, screen down, with the voice recorder already running. I started by stroking his ego. Daniel, I've had time to reflect, and I wanted to thank you again. I've been thinking about the presentation, and I'm just in awe of how you sold the strategy. You were amazing. He puffed up immediately. Of course, Sarah. It's what I do. You have good instincts, but it takes experience to close a deal that big. The client needed to see leadership, someone with gravitas. I nodded, playing the eager student. I see. So my work was just the starting point then. Exactly, he said, taking the bait. Your work was a good foundation, but I built the house. You'll learn that at this level, business is about perception. It's not about who did the grunt work. It's about who gets the credit. That's what matters. Grunt work. The phrase felt like a slap, but I didn't flinch. I pressed on. So, just so I can learn, you're saying it was better for the company that I wasn't credited. He scoffed, giving me a pitying look. Precisely. Don't be so sentimental. Your name on a slide doesn't make the company money. My relationship with the client does. You got your promotion, right? So everyone got what they wanted. Consider it a valuable lesson in corporate reality. My phone silently captured every single damning word. He admitted everything. He'd intentionally taken the credit, dismissed my work as grunt work, and justified it all because I got a prize. It was the smoking gun. I left his office with a polite, "Thank you for the insight, Daniel," holding the poison I needed in my hand, my heart like a piece of ice. Now for the party. It was no longer a celebration. It was a tribunal. I booked a chic, modern event space with a state-of-the-art sound system and, most importantly, a massive HD projector. I curated the guest list carefully, my family and friends for support. Then, respected managers from other departments, people whose opinions carried weight. I invited Mark, the brilliant junior designer from my team who had also seen his work stolen. And, of course, the guest of honor, Daniel Bishop, was at the very top of the list. The stage was set. The evidence was secure. And the guest of honor had no idea he was walking into his own public execution. He thought he was attending a party to celebrate his power over me. In reality, he was the main attraction in my carefully orchestrated exposé. Before I tell you exactly what happened when the music stopped and the recording started, I have to ask, if you believe toxic bosses and credit stealers always get what's coming to them, hit that like button. It tells me I'm not alone. And subscribe if you want to hear more stories about getting the last laugh. Okay, are you ready? Here's what happened next. The party was in full swing. Music was playing, people were laughing, glasses were clinking. My friends were congratulating me, and my parents were beaming with a pride that both warmed my heart and filled me with guilt for the chaos I was about to cause. On the surface, it was a perfect celebration, but my nerves were stretched tight. I felt a strange, out-of-body calm, the kind you get when there's no turning back. Daniel arrived fashionably late, of course, striding in like a conquering hero. He moved through the crowd, shaking hands with my friends, even patting my dad on the back. I watched him make a beeline for my parents and caught the most important line, delivered with sickening condescension. "You must be so proud of Sarah. She has a bright future, especially with me looking out for her." The audacity was breathtaking. About an hour in, I nodded to the DJ. The music faded, and I stepped into the center of the room, tapping a champagne flute. "Hi, everyone. Can I have your attention for a moment?" The chatter died down. I started with the truth. "I just want to thank all of you for being here. It means the world. To my amazing friends and my incredible family," I said, my voice thick with real emotion, "thank you for your endless support." I then turned to my colleagues. "And to my team, especially Mark," I said, looking right at the young designer. "Your talent on the Odyssey campaign was the foundation of its success. Thank you." I was about to propose a toast when a smooth voice cut in. "Thank you, Sarah. If I could just add a few words." It was Daniel, stepping up to hijack the moment, just as I knew he would. He took a theatrical breath. "It has been a true pleasure to mentor Sarah," he began. "When she first brought the raw ideas for the Odyssey campaign to me, they were promising, full of potential, but they lacked a certain strategic vision. It took a lot of guidance, a lot of late nights on my part, to shape that raw clay into the sculpture that won over the client." The room was silent. My friends were frowning. My parents' smiles had vanished. "He wasn't done, but she's a quick learner." I saw the potential, and I was determined to guide her towards this promotion. It's what a good mentor does. So, let's all raise a glass to good mentorship. He raised his glass with a triumphant grin. He had publicly rewritten history in front of everyone I cared about. As the polite applause died, he turned to me, his smile turning into a sneer. Is that all you've got? This was it, his fatal error. My cue. I let the silence hang in the air. Then a slow, deliberate smile spread across my face. Not quite, Daniel, I said, my voice suddenly strong and clear. I have one more thing to show everyone. I pointed the remote at the projector screen. You talk about lessons, Daniel. Well, I've been documenting my education very carefully. In fact, I have a little case study on corporate reality I'd like to share. His smug look faltered. With a click, the screen flared to life. The first image was a screenshot of the presentation file's metadata. The words were huge. Author, Sarah Miller. Created by Sarah Miller. Last modified by Sarah Miller, with the timestamp from the night before the presentation. A low murmur went through the crowd. Click. Next slide. An email thread. My email to Daniel. Final strategy deck attached and his reply. Thanks, looks good. I'll take it from here. Click. The next slide showed Slack screenshots from weeks earlier. It was a brainstorming session with my team, developing the exact campaign tagline Daniel had claimed as his own. Daniel's face was losing all its color. His mouth was hanging slightly open. He was starting to get it. But documents can be misinterpreted, right? I said to the stunned room. So, to avoid any confusion, I thought we should hear it directly from the mentor himself. I took a deep breath and pressed the button. Daniel's arrogant, condescending voice filled the silent room. Asterisk, you have good instincts, but it takes experience. Your work was a good foundation, but I built the house. It's not about who did the grunt work. It's about who gets the credit. Don't be so sentimental. You got your promotion, didn't you? Everyone got what they wanted. Consider it a lesson in corporate reality. Asterisk. When the recording ended, the silence was absolute. Every single eye in the room was fixed on Daniel. He stood frozen, a statue of humiliation. His face was a mess of white shock and blotchy red. He opened his mouth, then closed it. There was nothing to say. He had been so completely and publicly exposed by his own words. The mentor was naked, stripped of his lies, and there was nothing left but a petty, insecure thief. The party was over. His career was over. He just didn't know it yet. For what felt like forever, Daniel just stood there. Then, without a word, he turned and pushed his way through the stunned crowd and practically ran out of the venue. The soft click of the door, closing, sounded like a gunshot in the silent room. The spell was broken. My parents were instantly by my side, their arms around me, their faces a mix of fury at him and fierce pride in me. My friends formed a protective circle. Mark, the junior designer, came up to me, his eyes wide. "Sarah," he said, his voice trembling a little, "that was the bravest thing I have ever seen." The party had ended in the most spectacular way possible, but I felt a sense of vindication so pure it almost brought me to my knees. I didn't go into the office on Monday. Instead, I spent the morning writing an email to the CEO, the COO, and the head of HR. I CC'd my lawyer. The subject line was, "Formal complaint regarding professional misconduct and intellectual property theft by Daniel Bishop." In the email, I laid out the entire story calmly and chronologically. I didn't use emotional language. I just stated the facts. Then I attached the evidence, the emails, the Slack logs, the metadata, and the star exhibit, the full unedited audio recording of Daniel confessing to everything. I hit send and felt a huge weight lift off my shoulders. The response was faster than I could have imagined. Less than an hour later, the CEO called me. He was horrified. He didn't question a single thing. He asked if I could meet with him and HR the next day. I learned later that Daniel was called into a meeting that same afternoon. He was immediately suspended and escorted out of the building by security. He tried to deny it, but you can't argue with an audio recording. 2 days later, he was fired for cause. In an industry as small as ours, news like that travels fast. His career wasn't just over at our company, it was over, period. The next day, I sat in the CEO's office. He apologized again, profusely, on behalf of the company. He admitted it was a catastrophic failure of leadership. And then he made me an offer that stunned me. They didn't just want me to stay. They offered me Daniel's job. "We need a new head of the project management department," he said. "Someone with integrity, talent, and leadership. That person is you. The job is yours if you want it." The offer came with a significant salary increase and a substantial bonus, framed as both a retention incentive and a formal apology. This was my vindication. It was never just about revenge. It was about reclaiming what was mine. I had been betrayed, and I had fought back not with emotion but with evidence. I had refused to be a footnote in my own story. I accepted the position. The first few months as head of the department were a challenge. I had to rebuild a culture of trust that Daniel had destroyed. But I led with the transparency and fairness I'd been denied. I made it my personal mission to ensure that every single person on my team got credit for their work, so no one would ever feel invisible again. I also decided to work with a professional coach who specializes in workplace trauma. The experience left a scar, and I was determined not to let it make me bitter or cynical. It helped me learn how to set firm boundaries and to trust my own judgment, so I would never be in that position again. Daniel tried to teach me a lesson about corporate reality. He believed the world was run by people like him, who took what they wanted from those who did the actual work. He thought I was just another rung on his ladder. But in the end, I was the one who taught him a lesson about consequences. He underestimated me. That was his downfall. He thought I was just a naive girl who would be grateful for whatever scraps he threw me. He never imagined that I was documenting his every move, collecting his lies like receipts. He never saw the quiet, calculated anger behind my polite smile. Sometimes the quietest person in the room isn't weak. They're the one who is listening, planning, and waiting for the perfect moment to strike. My story isn't just about revenge. It's about justice. It's about refusing to be silenced. And it's about the undeniable power of the truth. My name is Sarah Miller. I am the head of the department. I earned it, and I have the receipts to prove it.